Just looking at the relationship between central government and the states, there's significant debate on whether or not Nigeria operates under a federal system. Where does Nigeria stand for you?
Well, under our constitution, we're operating under a federal system. And in terms of the states as units under the federal system, that is what, in theory, operates. In a sense, there are lots of aspects of the system that people claim is unitary, in terms of revenue allocation and the revenue formula that's used, and in things like, for example, we have a federal police and no state police. So there's some issues that people claim makes our federal system more unitary than federal in reality.
Is there merit in the argument calling for more state control than we're currently seeing, especially off the coffers, so revenue moving forward?
I think in the end of the day, you want to get development and resources closer to the people. Now, as the federals under the federating unit, the states are closer to the people than you could argue. The states are closer to the people than the federal system. So resources should be diverted closer to the state level and probably local government level, so that they can know where to address economic and development problems better.
Let's use a working example there, because Lagos State currently stands as the best working example of a state that is economically working in terms of state having control over its own purse strings.
Yes, I think Lagos State is a unique case. It's a blending pot for Nigeria, but it's 70% of Nigeria's non-oil GDP is from Lagos State. So Lagos State has always been in a position that, if properly managed, could generate revenues through internal generated revenues that makes it less reliant on the federal system than some other states which are less viable. But in the last 10 to 12 years, what has been shown by the management of Lagos State resources is that with the proper management, you can gather enough internal resources that you're relying less on the federal system, and then you can then have your own economic development plan to suit your state more than others.
So where we do have this working example then, I mean, why the resistance to move towards that system, lessening control of central government? Where do you see those major stumbling blocks actually lying?
Not every state is like Lagos State. You have some states that are less economic viable and rely solely on federal allocated revenue. So those states would want to keep that happening. I think also, secondly, in the sense that Lagos State was lucky in the sense that it was kind of forced through as an opposition state, it was forced through political problems with the federal central to be more self-sufficient. I think some other states that would want to do that, they don't really have the resources or the capability to do that in that sense. And that's where the dichotomy is, because under a federal system, you do not want more states, some states, to be so far ahead of other states that it brings the whole unitary concept of the federation into doubt.
Of course, if any change is to happen, it would need to happen at a constitutional level first. What are the chances of that happening, where we had a constitutional review taking place last year already and not many changes having emanated from that?
At the constitutional level, for the changes to happen, you need obviously 2/3 in the National Assembly and at least 2/3 of the state house assemblies to agree. And there lies in the problem. In a purpose, a lot of the southern states, especially the oil-producing states, want more financial autonomy over the resources that are gathered from them. But then a lot of the states further north are against it, because they see themselves where, at the moment, some of them get 3 to 4 times less revenue than some of the southern states. And on the increased derivation for some of the southern states, that would increase even more. But in terms of the federal system, they have a majority of the states compared to some of the southern states. And in the National Assembly, they have a majority as well. Now, going by the parliamentary results last week, it doesn't appear that any one party will have the 2/3 majority in the National Assembly to drive any such move. So for such a move, you require different parties to work together, and that does not seem very forthcoming.
Well, with that being the case, we have much of the focus directed towards the presidential elections as opposed to state elections. That's where bulk of the decisions at this stage gets made. What's your outlook for the election outcomes, having just gone through the first leg of this election process?
The big battle is going to be this weekend in the presidential election. I think most analysts are encouraged by what happened last weekend. in the elections. I think there's been a lot of different analysis based on the results that happened last weekend as to what will happen on Saturday. I think Saturday is really the big decision. And going by what's happened last weekend, I think some people are putting too much store into what happened in terms of the PDP and CPC and ACN and the different seats they had, because last weekend was really about intra-politics at state level. I think when it comes to the national level, you probably see more voting blocks coming into the fore.